This is like the alien Sigourney Weaver fan club.
I don't understand, like, the amount of money, the time, and the stress. Like, what do you do if you're going to the beach and you want to go swimming and you got this, like, glue on your hair and shit? Like, it's too much.
I think that what I found to be the most difficult part, and even now I'm still sort of trying to figure out, is do I wash it with soap or do I wash it with shampoo? Like,
yeah, I always use shampoo.
When I had no hair, I was like, well, first I'm like, what's the point of shampoo? I have literally no hair. So I would just use nothing. Like, I didn't wash my head for a lot of the time because I was like, well, there's really no point.
Yeah. I have no basis for, like, why I think this, but in my head, and I think this is because my wife may have told me this, is she seems to think that, like, the skin on your face in your head is different than the skin on your body. So you're supposed to use, like, special soap for your face, usually costs, like, way more.
Yeah.
And then you're not supposed to use, like, regular soap on your scalp because it'll, like, dry it out or whatever. So, like, even though, like, I think my skin is pretty much the same all around, like, she seems to think that, like, there's different skin types on parts of your body that you have to use different soap for, and I don't know why.
I mean, I can understand the face part. Like, I will get on that boat to a certain extent. Like, I'll use like, you know, $20 or $18 face wash on my face, and, like, I use face lotion, like one lotion thing, and that's it. Like, but your head, I just don't. It's your scalp. Like, I don't feel like that should be the same. I feel like you should just use, like, bar soap or whatever.
Yeah, we'll figure out. So,
what town are you in?
I live in Manchester.
Oh, so you are in New Hampshire. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, heck yeah. Are you kidding?
Yeah, because a lot of us up here don't take showers.
Exactly. Like, what's the point? My husband gives me crap, actually. I'm a really smelly person, I think. Maybe more so than normal. I don't know, but my pack is out on the porch because it smells so bad.
Oh my God. We can talk about that.
Oh.
That's a whole topic of discussion. That's a whole episode.
Oh my.
Broadcasting from the Woodpeckers studio in the great state of New Hampshire, welcome to the Sounds Like a Search and Rescue podcast, where we discuss all things related to hiking and search and rescue in the White Mountains of New Hampshire. Here are your hosts, Mike and Stump.
For the sake of the audience, we were just talking about, like, how to maintain your hair and your cleanliness when you're a bald person. So
or your lack thereof.
Yeah, exactly, when you have no hair. So, and we'll get into why we're talking about that with Rebecca later on in the show. All right, Stomp. So episode 8, we are in the groove now of this thing.
Yes, and we have our very first sitting guest in interview, and we're both psyched. It's Rebecca Sperry, otherwise known as SockedIn Hikes. She is here with us. Hello.
Hello, guys.
Hello. All right, I want to get to the name origin later on in the show, but we'll reference you as Rebecca right now. But Stomp, we got some big changes this week. The podcast has been released, so we dropped the first 2 episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been really interesting, huh?
Yeah, and
any feedback?
Yeah, I've decided I don't want any feedback, so mostly positive, but, you know, like a couple of people have said, like, oh, let me give you constructive criticism about things, and, like, it's too stressful, I can't deal with it, so.
Yeah, people are giving me heat over what I'm drinking. It's like, I can't have a Pinot?
Yeah, I'm getting the same thing, like, with the drink thing, we'll talk about what we're drinking tonight, but I took like 10 years off of drinking. So when my daughter was born, I stopped drinking for probably about 8 or 9 years. So when I stopped drinking was when, like, it was still Bud Light and Coors Light and all the normal drinks. And then it transitioned into this, like, IPA world. So I always thought that, like, drinking IPAs were cool. But now that we've done the podcast, we're getting feedback from people, and they're like, oh, you're a wannabe hipster drinking IPAs. And I always just thought that was what everybody drinks. But apparently, in order to be cool, you need to drink a stout or an ale. So, I don't know.
It's more rugged.
Yeah.
Stout. It's stout.
Yeah. But there's definitely, like, people have given a lot of positive feedback about the first 2 episodes. I personally thought they sucked compared to what we're doing now.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
But
I can't listen to them.
Yeah. I just don't want any feedback, though. It's too stressful. So,
Yeah.
Rebecca, you've been on podcasts before, right?
Yeah, this is my 8th.
This is your 8th podcast?
Yeah, I'm like a pro now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Tell us what the hell to do. We don't know what we're doing here.
I think you're doing great. I listened to episode 1 about the Franconia Ridge.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember if that's the only one
Riveting, wasn't it?
It was. No, you guys have good voices, though, for podcasting. I think that's really important is the voice.
Oh, I'm so... my friend always tells me, he's like, oh, you got that, like, Bill Burr Boston accent. And I'm, like, so paranoid because I try to cover up the Boston accent, but because I don't want to be that guy that's like, oh, it's a baby whale, you know, like that sort of, like, really out of control accent. But I just overthink shit.
I have to be honest, I kind of like the fact that you have an accent because I think that it makes it feel more authentic. And coming from New England, I mean, I don't feel like I have an accent at all. And
yeah,
I think I can appreciate it more because of the fact that I'm from the area. So don't hide it.
Well, I'm gonna continue to hide it as best I can, but but anyway, it's been an interesting week. We've got a bunch of downloads, and generally people have been happy with it. So we're going to keep rolling on this. And this week we're going to continue our intro to New Hampshire hiking series, and we're going to be talking about Waterfalls, this is Stomp's big moment to cover Waterfalls.
Oh yeah, love them.
Yeah, so if you want to avoid some elevation and you want to look to cool off this summer while doing a little hiking, in this episode, we will give you a list of the most beautiful waterfalls in New Hampshire. Later in the show, we'll cover some recent search and rescue events, one of which is actually related to taking a wrong turn on the way to one of the most popular waterfalls in New Hampshire. And then we're going to finish up the show with our very first guest as we welcome Rebecca. Although we've already welcomed Rebecca, but we're going to welcome her again. Rebecca's
for a second time.
Yeah, exactly. She's one of the most prolific hikers in the White Mountains. So we're going to talk to her about her background. We're going to get her story of hiking while going through treatment for cancer. And I'm sure we're going to cover a bunch of other topics here. And she's going to jump in to give us some of her opinions on waterfalls and search and rescue as well. So let's get started. I'm Mike.
And I'm Stomp. Here we go. So Rebecca, thanks again for sitting in. We'll start the show here with a brief discussion about our Lord's specialty, alcohol. You may not partake, but that's fine. Mike, what are you drinking tonight?
I have a Greenhead IPA from Newburyport Brewing, so local to my area, which is very nice. So what about you, Stomp?
I took a lot of heat, like I had mentioned about drinking Pinot Grigio. So I'm going real deep, dark into some heavy stuff now. I'm going to put on a low voice for this one, okay?
Okay.
Tonight it's a Cabernet by Cupcake.
All right. So Stomp is our wine person, and then Rebecca, are you drinking? Can you drink? Are you able to drink? Do you not drink?
To be honest, I don't drink, so I don't know. I never asked if I was allowed to or not. I probably can't. I don't know.
You don't know.
Yeah, probably not a good idea. Yeah. I would guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Honestly, like I said, I was like 10 years I didn't drink. I would drink every once in a while. Like I would go on like a vacation and I would drink like a fruity drink or whatever. And I just started doing it again, mostly because of COVID. And I was like, I'm just bored out of my mind. So I was like, I just want to go to the liquor store to like see somebody. So, but that's good. So we usually do try to start it off with a quick drink discussion. And then we're just going to move into our next topic, which is recent hikes. So Stomp, where have you been? What have you been doing with your bum hip?
Well, I've actually progressed from my single crutch to 2 hiking poles, which it took me like a year to get rid of hiking poles for search and rescue because you can't use them because you end up poking people's eyeballs out when you're moving people and everything else. So I'm back to hiking poles. But I'm doing like these little 200, 300-foot hikes. There's this place across the street here called Brook. there's a little spur that there's a can. I might have mentioned this last episode, but there's a place called Love Connection, which goes up maybe half a mile to this overlook that looks over Welch Dickey and Bald Mountain and Acteon Ridge, and it's really cool. So I pulled that off, and I've been doing some little hikes, but still need those poles for a little reduction of weight on my leg. But I'm getting there. Definitely getting there.
Yeah. When do you think you'll be? I think we talked about July 4th would be like your return to normalcy. Is that still reasonable, you think?
Well, normal in terms of day-to-day life, but in terms of the vigors of, carrying or hiking with 50 pounds, it's going to be much longer, I think. And I'm actually talking to people that are saying, 3 months out from now, that's when you want to back off. Because that's when people make stupid mistakes and they get cocky and they can disrupt the healing of the scar tissue and things like that. So it makes complete sense. So I'm going to take it easy. No reason to blow it. It's too important to get this far into it and blow it over something stupid.
Yeah, so, just be careful.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how about you, Mike? Have you been out?
I was out, yeah. I had big plans, so I was originally going to go down to so I wanted to avoid snow, so I was going to go down into the Ossipes and do like a loop of Mount Roberts and Mount Shaw. And I didn't realize how that's a long loop. It's like 12 miles or something. But I ended up getting a COVID vaccine appointment for Saturday. So I was like, I didn't know how I was going to feel. I got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and I was kind of looking at that loop, and I was like, it's a little bit too long because I just didn't know how I was going to feel after getting the vaccine. So I ended up going up to the Sandwich Range, and I hiked the Hedgehog Mountain. I did that loop there, and I had a big moment. I was very excited. I saw a moose finally, and
on trail.
On trail, yeah. I was coming. I went counterclockwise, so I went up and I did Allen's Ledge, and then I went up to the top, and then I was hanging out in the ledges for like an hour by myself. And then as I was coming down, I saw like this huge movement coming right across the trail, and then it disappeared for a second, and I walked down a little ways, and then this moose was like in a little brook having a drink, and I got a nice video of it, and I was like very excited because it's the first time I've seen a moose in the wild. I see them crossing the street all the time, but it was very cool.
It's pretty awesome when you see them.
Yeah.
It's a rarity. It seems like it's getting more rare as well.
Yeah, but I don't know.
How about you, Socked? You been hiking?
Yeah, let's see. What did I just do? I just did some redlining over, oh my gosh, where was I? I have to look at my GPS thing to remind my brain. Sorry. Oh, that's right. I did 4 separate hikes. On Tuesday, I did,
nice.
Yeah, I did the Lovequist Loop. I did Church Pond Trail. I did River and Rail Trail, and I did Georgiana Falls. So it's interesting. We're doing a waterfall podcast.
We'll talk about that one tonight for sure.
And Lovequist is the one that's, I think it's Gorge Brook? I don't remember. Oh my gosh. Well, anyways, there is a waterfall type thing at the beginning of that. But yeah, I did 4 separate hikes on Tuesday, and I'm really sad actually it's raining tomorrow because I wanted to hike tomorrow, so I'm almost tempted to go do, I adopted Cedar Brook Trail. So I'm actually kind of thinking I might go do a recon mission and just go see what it looks like out there, because I don't want to not hike tomorrow, but it's going to be raining all day.
Did you hear the forecast?
It's going to be like
the higher summits.
Yeah, it's going to be like 10 to 12 inches of snow, I think.
I know, amazing.
I can't believe it.
It's good content for the show.
It's going to be like gross. Like I'm just so done with snow.
Yeah. And when you say you adopted a trail, so you're the trail maintainer for that trail?
Yeah. So I used to actually have. A few years ago, I adopted the Livermore Trail up to the Height of Land, coming from Kangamangas Highway, and I gave it up a few years after adopting because I ended up, I was going to be doing a through hike, so I'm like, oh, I can't do this too. And now that I'm not doing the single year attempt of redlining, I decided it's time for me to start giving back And I live in Manchester, which stinks because it's too far south, really, to be, unless I did the Lakes Region SAR. So anyway, so I adopted a trail. It's the one way I want to give back, which I feel like it's such an amazing opportunity. I wish more people would take advantage of it in a way.
That's funny. I tried to sign up for that, but they never got back to me.
Yeah, you have to.
Okay.
I almost feel like you have to know people or something. I don't know. I got in touch with somebody years ago when I signed up, and then now I'm part of a Facebook group for people that are maintainers, and that's why I was able to just automatically get right into it again.
Very cool. I have to do that because Stomp, you're giving back by being on search and rescue. Rebecca's giving back by maintaining a trail. Like I'm doing nothing, so I need to adopt a trail or something.
Yeah.
You're giving back. You're giving back with this beautiful voice of yours on this podcast.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that, but
You have an awesome Facebook page too. You're giving back.
that's true. That is true. I'm shedding light. I'm shedding light on the search and rescue scene in the area.
Oh yeah, yeah, no question.
Very cool. All right, so we've all been out, which is good because that's the biggest thing is maintaining the hiking, especially in April and May when it's so gross.
SLASR's hiking topic of the week.
We're going to move into our first segment, which is Waterfalls. What we're going to do here is, again, this continues our intro to hiking series, so we want to target this towards people that are new to hiking and want to learn more about the whites, and then we try to throw things in for more experienced hikers so that everybody gets sort of a little bit of knowledge here. So the way that we're going to break this down is that we've got we want to highlight a few waterfalls that are in and around the White Mountains, and we're going to break this down into 3 categories. The first category is easily accessible and more popular waterfalls. Then we're going to have a set of lesser known but still relatively easily accessible, and then the last group will be the harder to get to waterfalls. So I think, Stomp, I gave you the homework assignment of covering the easily accessible waterfalls, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I am ready.
Okay.
I've got them all covered here.
You got your tourist waterfalls ready to go.
All the places I've avoided these years.
All the places I've taken my children when they were little.
Well, first on the list is the classic. It's Arethusa Falls. This is a 140-foot fall, very popular. It's in Crawford Notch. It's a 2-mile out and back trip, so it's a fairly easy hike. That would be 1.4 for the arithmetically challenged. You take the Bemis Brook Trail up to this fall, and it's gorgeous, but I have not seen it. I've seen little pictures of it on my computer.
You've never been there? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well,
it gets crowded. It's definitely a tourist hike. It's very popular, but it's a beautiful fall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you recommend it?
Highly, yes.
Okay.
It's just long enough to really, it's enough to really get you into hiking, and it's, the waterfall when it's running is really amazing to look at.
Okay. Well, the nearest neighbor in Crawford Notch is Ripley Falls. This is a little shorter. It's 1.1 mile out and back. Apparently this fall is about 100 feet high. There's a 400-foot elevation gain when you're hiking to this one. This one apparently is about a 60-degree angle, so there's a lot of talk about how it's so steep that the water is just stunning when it comes off of this rock. It's described as a moderately difficult trail to hike up, but again, short. You take the Ethan Pond Trail to the Arethusa Ripley Falls Trail, and voila, you are there. Now, has anybody been to this fall?
I have been up Ethan Pond a few times, but not to the falls. But I will say that's a pretty steep ascent to get to that.
Really?
Yeah, I think.
Is it really?
Well,
Okay.
the Ethan Pond Trail it's not that, I don't know. I found it to be pretty steep. Maybe that's after the falls, I don't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember either. I've been there a bunch of times, but I feel like you do it's a steep drop into the falls, and then coming back is a bit of a climb. So, but I feel like Arethusa is a little bit easier to get to, and then Ripley's a little bit more of a slightly more difficult hike.
Mm-hmm. Now, how about the third one? Sabbaday? Has anybody been there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of times.
Awesome.
Yeah, Sabbaday is a perfect one for anybody that doesn't actually want to hike. You just pull up on the Kangamangas Highway, pull into the parking lot, and you can walk out maybe a quarter mile, half mile to the falls, and it's a really great area.
So it's recommended for all skill levels, you would say?
Yeah. This is it's a tourist, like, pull up, get out of your car, and walk in your jeans to get to the waterfalls. No problem.
Now, this one is 100 foot as well. They say it's 98 feet. So it's just almost breaking 100 feet high. That's got to be pretty impressive.
The only thing about that one, I love that one. I've done Sabbaday a ton of times. But in the spring or shoulder season, it can be really icy because it's a very wide trail path that you take to get to that area. And for some, I definitely can remember hiking down that trail in spring and seeing so many tourists in the wrong attire hiking on the ice.
Well, you know what's funny? Yeah, when I was researching some of these, I was reading the comments underneath, like at All Trails and stuff like that. And most of the recent comments, everybody was saying, it's a sheet of ice. Nobody had, everybody had sneakers on. Nobody had spikes. Comment after comment after comment. And I think typically with the heavier foot traffic trails, you're going to see a lot more ice, even this time of the year, just packed down tight. So, good point.
What else you got, Stomp?
Oh, this is your favorite. I've actually tried my best to avoid this place all my life, and I've never been here. Diana's Bath, or Baths. Yeah, this is over in the North Conway side, so it's super popular. It's 1.3 mile out and back hike, pretty much all skill levels. It's definitely like most of these places, it is pay to play, but you're definitely going to pay $5 to get into this place. It's described more as a lengthy span of rocks, ledges, more cascades along Lucy Brook. Now, the cascading falls themselves measure about 75 feet high. Very similar to Cascade Brook in Franconia Notch. If you park at the basin and head up Cascade Brook, there are very similar cascading falls up there. The only problem, expect lines of cars, crowds, and flip-flops and trash.
Hasn't this been one of the places a lot of people have gotten hurt? I feel like there's a lot of SARS on this particular.
Yeah, there is, and I think it's a swimming hole, so I think a lot of people will slip. They'll have lower leg injuries. There was a lady that had fallen, I think, in the fall. She was wearing she posted a picture of her on social media of her standing there, and then she had a before and an after, and she was wearing really inappropriate footwear, and she wiped out, and she had to get hauled out of Diana's Bath. So it's just very crowded, and I think that it's wet rock, people slip, and I think for the most part I actually don't see a lot in the news. I think that the local fire departments will just come out and pick people off the trail and bring them to the hospital there in North Conway. This is a decent list of I feel like you've kind of covered the easily accessible as well as some of the lesser known ones, but anything else you got?
One more, and this is a classic because this connects to Hollywood. Glen Ellis Falls. I've seen this a number of times. Have you? Either of you seen Glen Ellis?
Yeah, we used to go there all the time.
How about you?
Honestly, I don't remember where it is, but I probably have walked by it, or where is it?
Okay, well, let me tell you. This is a short quarter-mile hike down to a 64-foot waterfall. Basically, you can park either at Pinkham Notch and walk down a quarter mile, or park across the street at Glen Boulder, and it's right under the highway. What's really funny about this waterfall, are you familiar with Bear Grylls? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, that adventure show?
Yeah.
There is an episode where he takes Don Cheadle into New Hampshire, and they show Glen Ellis Falls. All of a sudden, they're bushwhacking through the forest, and they have barely any food or water. And all of a sudden, they pull up to Glen Ellis Falls. They're, if you're at the bottom looking up at the falls, to the right, you see those rocky ledges. All of a sudden, Bear and Don Cheadle come up to this place, and they're like, how the hell are we going to get across this?
It's 2 seconds from the road, though.
Right, but they make it like they're lost in the White Mountains of New Hampshire ready to die. And they're like literally 20 feet away from the road. Exactly. But it gets even better because Bear pulls out a rope and throws it across to the other side. And miraculously, it goes from one scene to the next. It wraps around a tree. And then the rope itself in the next scene turns into legit high-tech rope system, and they end up like climbing over to the other side. It's the funniest damn thing you'll ever see.
All right, we need to do an episode on this to expose this nonsense, because I heard about this. My recollection when they filmed this was like they did something near Crawford Notch. They went down the train tracks, and then they were somewhere below like Willard or something like that. But I don't know the details.
Oh, it's hilarious. You have to look it up. It's great.
All right. Well, I'm going to do some research on this. We may have to expose them for frauds.
Now, Sock, you just went here. When was it? Just the other day?
Georgiana. I went there Tuesday. Okay. Yeah, Tuesday.
Okay. This place is absolutely fantastic. This is in North Woodstock. It's literally 100 yards south of Whaletail Water Park. Route 3 Lincoln, you take Hanson Farm Road, and you'll see a sign system and a trail that heads to Georgiana, which is the lowest fall, and then Harvard Falls, which is probably one of the most stunning things I've ever seen. It's like a 200-foot fall. Altogether, you're looking at 2.5 mile out and back, and to get to the higher fall system, it's definitely moderate to difficult, especially in the shoulder season. It can be pretty treacherous. We've actually had some search and rescue activity up there, and it's not easy getting down, but highly, highly recommended. When it's high water, that higher waterfall is just something to see. You'll never see anything like it because you're literally 10 feet in front of it, sitting on this almost like a stone bench that almost looks like somebody built. So it's really stunning.
I did that hike, part of the redlining. The upper falls, I will definitely say, is less well blazed.
Yeah.
And coming back, I was definitely using my watch to make sure I was following the same track, because it was not an easy navigation compared to what I would have thought for something that seemed like it would be pretty popular.
Mm-hmm. There's actually a sort of like a herd path / bootleg trail. When you get to the base of the first waterfall, if you just go into the woods to the right before that first little lower water crossing, there's a trail that will take you all the way up to that highest fall, and it's super easy. It's basically a ridge walk straight up towards the highest point, and that's actually how we get people out if they get injured. We take them right down that ridge instead of going down all that treacherous stuff. So, awesome. So, Mike, you've been up there, right?
I haven't. No, I have not been in that area, because we were talking about how I want to go hike Mount Pemigewasset soon, but I have never. What is that? Exit 33? I haven't been around there at all.
Yeah, it is 33. Yep. Yeah, you take a right, you bear right off the exit, and it's just right on the left. It's pretty cool. Highly recommended. Now, let's see. We have two more.
Okay.
And these are getting a little harder. We have Kinsman Falls, which is up off of Cascade Brook. Basically, you park at the basin, and Cascade Brook Trail is a little tricky to find, but it's more or less behind the basin. You have to look out for signs. Not the easiest thing to find, despite the popularity of the basin itself. There's just a series of swimming basins and waterfalls. Kinsman Falls itself is about 35 feet high. And beyond that, there's another one called Rocky Glen Falls. Really neat place to explore. The water is damn cold if you want to try to go swimming.
Yeah, and Rebecca, you had talked about Diana's Bath being a hot spot for search and rescue. Like Cascade Brook during like early summer this year, there was like 3 or 4 incidents there of people just like either breaking their ankles or like twisting an ankle and needing to get carried out of there. So I haven't been there, but sounds slippery to me.
Mm-hmm. And moving on to a little touch of New Hampshire history.
Let's dive into some White Mountains history, shall we?
Bridal Falls. There's a little bit of celebrity history here with Betty Davis. Did you know? Were you aware of that?
I was not aware of that.
Okay, this is really interesting. She's obviously the Oscar-winning actress in All About Eve and Whatever Happened to Baby Jane back in the 30s and 40s. She actually had a home up in Sugar Hill, which is just north of Bridal Veil. Bridal Veil itself it's basically a 4.8 mile out and back hike, easy to moderate. The waterfalls are beautiful. I think they're about 50 feet tall. But apparently Betty Davis met somebody in that area and ended up, they were married, and this was her second husband. His name is Aritha Farnsworth. And about, say, a mile or so up into the hike itself, you can find a little plaque that she put on a boulder, which is on the stream itself as you're hiking up. And it's dedicated to this fella that she was married to. She's not directly attributed on the plaque itself, but there's a little note that says something to the effect of from the grateful one. So she was the grateful one for their love affair. Isn't that nice?
Are there any other celebrities that live in the White Mountains? I don't even know. I remember there was always this rumor that Shania Twain lived in New Hampshire. Did you guys ever hear that rumor that Shania Twain was I used to hear that all the time. It was she bought a house somewhere in the White Mountains, and I was always looking for her whenever I was hiking, but no luck.
I feel like I thought I heard Britney Spears had a house in the Winnipesaukee area.
I feel like I've heard that rumor too, and I do know that Justin Timberlake, and who was he married to?
Oh, Jessica something.
Jessica Biel, yeah.
Biel,
they were at the Wakefield Diner in Wakefield, New Hampshire on 16 at one point. So, but that's it. We don't get too many celebrity sightings in New Hampshire.
Well, here's the last point about this, and then we'll move on.
Okay.
They were married until 1943 because Mr. Farnsworth died falling down the stairs of their home in Sugar Hill. Isn't that heartbreaking?
Yeah.
That's too bad.
Oh, that's terrible.
At least he didn't fall down a waterfall.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the very last one, kids. Brook Falls. If anybody's familiar with the B-18 bomber up near Mount Waterfalls off of Route 118 heading towards Moosilauke.
Yep.
About once you start into the water, the Brook system, there's about maybe half a mile from the bomber, you'll see visibly through the woods another cascading fall, which is just beautiful. And you can bushwhack down to it. It's a couple 100 yards away, but that's a really neat one for the more obscure, difficult treks. And that's all I've got.
All right. Well, I got a couple more, and then just for the audience's references, we will list all of these in the show notes, and then you can also just go to the SLASRpodcast.com website, and I'll have a full list of these waterfalls. And the other thing you can do is if you really want to research waterfalls, there's a Facebook group that is called the Northeast Waterfalls Group, and you can go on to that site, and it'll give you all kinds of information about not just New Hampshire, but all over New England. But there's a couple that I wanted to just call out that are harder to get to, that are kind of on the way to other hikes, which is something that and there's no names for these, but if you ever are hiking the Great Gulf Trail and you head out past the junction of Madison Gulf and you get deep into the Great Gulf, and you hike along the Peabody River, there's got to be 6 or 8 amazing waterfalls where you've got these rock areas where you can just hang out. You know what I'm talking about, Rebecca?
Actually, that's probably the one part of that area that I'm not familiar with the Great Gulf. I don't think I've even gone in there at all yet.
Ooh, I'm going to take you in there.
Man. You guys got to go.
Go
It's magic. Yeah. It's like Fangorn Forest. It's mythical and magical. Unbelievable. Old growth.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And there's a ton of random waterfalls and stuff where you can stop and eat. So that's one that I would definitely say is get into the Great Gulf, go along the Peabody River, and you will see a bunch of awesome waterfalls. So that's my sort of secret tip for anybody that's looking to get out of crowds and get to see some waterfalls.
Awesome.
So there's a few other ones we didn't get to here, but I'll just put them on the list. And the reality is that in this area, pretty much, half the hikes you go on, you'll run into some sort of water crossing, especially early in the year, and you'll see some great waterfalls.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts on waterfalls, Rebecca? Stomp?
Well, there's a really cool area that I just was exploring, actually, that the Randolph Mountain Club actually maintains the trail system. It's across from the Appalachia parking lot. There's a bunch of trails on the other side. It's near Durand Road. And there's some really cool spots down in there that I just discovered. And one of them, it's like a moss staircase kind of, and then there's also like a covered bridge down in there, and there's some water features. I'm pretty sure they're drinking water in Randolph, so you can't be getting in the water, but it's a really cool area, and it's really honestly not even that hard to get to. I think it was off Durand Road. I want to say it's called Mossy Path.
Mossy Path. All right. I'm going to do some research and check that out, because I have to get over to that area, because I've got like a couple more trails left on the Terrifying 25, so I have to hike into the ice gulch.
Okay, I did that. That was like a nightmare.
It was a nightmare.
Well, I also did it in a thunderstorm.
Oh, you did? What time of the year did you do it? Because I need to like figure out when to do this thing.
I did it in late June, early July, and there was still ice in some of the spots. And I think part of the problem was I didn't, like an idiot, didn't read the guidebook description ahead of time, and didn't realize I was getting myself into what I was getting myself into. And honestly, that was probably one of my least favorite trails because of it that I did so far, because I literally like started crying. It was awful.
Jeez.
All right. I'm looking forward to it then.
Well, I don't really like things that are super sketchy, and I hike solo. Like, I try not to make things more difficult than they need to be and more risky than they need to be, and that was not a fun experience for me. So
that's a bummer.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about like doing that in mid-June, but maybe I'll wait till July, give it a little bit more time to dry off.
I would do it, and don't do it if it has recently rained. Like, I'm talking, give it a week at least of dry conditions.
Okay. I will. I'll take that advice for sure, but I do have to get out there this summer at some point. But that area there, like, I never even think about going across the street from Appalachia, but I'll check that other area out.
Yeah, I just finished all of those trails. I have 2 hikes left on the that side of the Northern Prezzies to do, and then I'll have done all that trail system, like all of those spaghetti trails.
You've done all that stuff in Lower Adams?
Yeah.
Ugh. How do you even like make sure that you got everything?
I'm OCD about things. I mean, I'm like ridiculous.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way, so I appreciate that. So, but no, this is good stuff. Good talk about waterfalls. There's plenty to see out there. You just gotta, make your way in about a half mile or so and just listen for water, and you'll find some waterfalls. But the good thing about this episode, Stomp, is that there was a recent rescue on Arethusa Falls. So I was like, the search and rescue gods are looking down upon us because they know that we're doing the waterfall episode. And sure enough, 2 people that were hiking in the area were in trouble. They took a wrong turn. It looks like 2 ladies from Massachusetts, so my home state. They were hiking Arethusa Falls, and anybody that knows Arethusa Falls knows you kind of park down at the bottom, and you got to walk up this road, and then you get to the railroad tracks that have a sign that says, like, basically cross the track and head to the trail to get to Arethusa Falls.
Right.
For whatever reason, this couple decided that they were going to take a right on the railroad tracks. They started late, and they went down about 4 miles on the railroad tracks looking for the trailhead.
Which means that they were heading towards, like, the...
Crawford Notch. Crawford Notch.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they made it... they must have started late because they called 911 at around... 10:45, stating that they were lost, they had no lights, and they needed assistance. So the 911 coordinates. So you had talked about this before, like, so when you call, depending on your phone provider, I think, like, they can get the GPS coordinates for where you are. Is that right?
If you call 911, and in this case, if you're lucky enough to have service, which That's a big question here. Yeah, if you get through to 911, generally Fish and Game will have a approximate idea of your location.
Yeah. So it sounds like in this case, so they got through, and then they must have got disconnected, but they got enough connectivity to get their coordinates, and it put them 4 miles north of Arethusa Falls in the vicinity of the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
And they kept trying to call them back, but they weren't able to get through. So like you said, there's not a lot of connectivity in that area. So they finally, I guess, made their way out there around midnight, and they, the Fish and Game officers started hiking towards them, and eventually the two people that were lost, arrived back to the area. So they must have doubled back and made their way back down to the railroad tracks, and they were back in the parking lot around 1:30 in the morning. So fun night for them. I try to figure out, what could they have done differently, but I mean, I'm speechless.
Yeah, well, in this case, they had no lights. They were working on their cell phone light. They had no food, no water, no warm clothing. I mean, this time of the year is brutal. It can get really cold at night, even though it's a little warmer during the day. And, of course, the cell phone battery always loses power when it gets colder. So you always have to think of those things when you're heading out, even if it's a small hike like Arethusa.
Yeah. And one of these days, I'm going to reach out to some of these folks that get in trouble, because I'm always fascinated, which one of them made a decision to take the turn and stop walking down the tracks, and then told the other one, it's fine, we're in good shape. And then eventually they get to the point where they're like, we're screwed. Well, what happens? I would be pissed if I were the person that didn't make the decision.
I wonder if they were part of the Bear Grylls Don Cheadle fan club.
I don't know.
Because that's in that episode too, that train track.
Yeah, exactly.
It's possible.
That area gets a really terrible service too. I know every time I go, I'm telling you, you hit that notch and you lose service.
Oh, no question.
As soon as you crest it and head down.
It is a dead zone, because I do that event, Reach the Beach, every year, and you lose it right at the top of Crawford Notch, and then you don't get it back until you get into Bartlett, like a quarter mile before the Bear Notch Road turnoff. You get connectivity again, but in between there's nothing.
Cool. Well, that's all we have. I mean, side note, there were a couple other lost people. So this is a very busy week for search and rescue for lost, missing people. 2 other people were just 2 elders that got lost but were found again. But, interesting week for SAR.
Yeah. I do have one other update, a sad one. The lady who had unfortunately drowned in Lake Ossipee from Lowell, Mass. There was a recovery of her. So she was with her dog, and there was some sightings of the dog. I think that some neighbors had it on game cam, and there was some thought that the dog may be in the woods and be alive. But unfortunately, they did recover the dog in Ossipee as well. So it had drowned.
Aw.
So, which is sad. So with that on that positive note, Rebecca, let's move right into your segment. Jesus, sorry about that.
It's time for Slasher's Guest of the Week.
But we want to welcome Rebecca Sperry onto the show. Her trail name is SockedIn Hikes.
It's just
SockedIn. Her Instagram is SockedIn Hikes. So very excited to have you here, and we want to talk a little bit about her background, and we want to talk about a short film that was recently made about her story. So we'll get into Rebecca's story a little bit here in a moment, but I think just to start off with, Rebecca, can you just give us some background on how you got into hiking, and a little bit about what you're pursuing in your current hiking situation right now?
All right, so 2015, I decided I'm going to try. I wanted to go on a hike one day. Prior to that, I'd probably done about 10 hikes with my husband between 2008 and 2013, and then stopped hiking. Anyway, so 2015, I'm like, I want to go on a hike, and he said he didn't feel like going, so I was like, well, I'm going to go by myself then. And so, which is not something that I typically would have done ever. Like, I was very much like, I need to be with my spouse back then. So anyways, I decided I'm going to go by myself, and I decided to do Mount Major. So hiked Mount Major. It was the first time I'd ever hiked solo, first time I'd hiked in quite a while, and it was just amazing, very empowering. I was instantly hooked, and from then I continued hiking for the rest of the summer. And then the next year I kind of upped the ante and did even more. And so every year I continued to do more and more things, basically all solo. I think I stopped counting this year, but prior to this year, I think I had done like 13 hikes out of the hundreds I've done with anyone else. So I basically only hike solo.
But you like that, right?
And
you like the solitude.
I do. I love it. I do. I hate to say it, but when people invite me to go on hiking adventures with them, I typically kind of try to back out of it if I can help it, because I like to go solo.
I feel like that when Mike invites me too. I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, so I have one friend that I've been hiking with more recently, which is very much out of my comfort zone. And she's just an amazing person, Danielle Normand. I think you know her.
Yeah, she's fantastic. Yep.
Yeah, I know
So-
She's amazing.
Yeah, so she and I have done, I think, 3 or 4 hikes this spring together, which is insane for me. But anyways, so I continued doing more and more hikes. I did the 48 4,000 footers in 2018. I finished those in January, which is how I met Stomp, actually. And you, Mike, right? Yeah.
I have a side note here, because the 3 of us crossed paths coming down Falling Waters, if I remember correctly. We were coming down, she was going up. Do you remember that?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
In 2018,
Yeah,
January.
because we were going.
Oh,
yeah, we were
okay,
coming down
yeah.
Falling Waters. You had your headphones on, and it was just
It was bad weather. I was
it
nervous.
was a very brief interaction, but that was when we actually all saw each other in person for the first time. Wicked cool.
Yeah, that was finishing my 48, and I was really nervous because it was really crappy weather, and I am not the type to want to be like, let's do this. This will be
Mike,
a good risk.
I think that might have been when you took that picture that you just sent me the other day. That same day.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so you went up on the ridge that day? Because we turned around like big wimps. We were like, we're out
I'm
of
pretty
here.
sure that was the day.
Yeah, I actually crossed the ridge, and I
You
did
did?
I finished my 48 that day on Lafayette.
And you did it solo?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So just for the audiences,
Yeah, we chickened out.
We've talked about Franconia Ridge a couple of times. Like, that was not a great day. Like, it wasn't super windy, but there wasn't a lot of visibility.
No,
there,
and there was 2 other guys that were from Adirondack area, and they actually were ahead of. We kind of kept leapfrogging. Thankfully, they were up there. I wouldn't have continued. Probably, Stomp made it seem like it was not bad. So I'm like, oh well, he seems like he knows what he's doing, so I'm going to keep going. So he's basically the reason I
Don't
finished.
quote me. I mean, it might have been improving as we were coming down, but when Mike and I were up there, from Haystack, we ventured out maybe 20 feet towards the gargoyles in Lincoln. We're like, nah, let's go back.
See, I thought that you had crossed the ridge, so I'm like, oh well, they did it.
Oh,
so I guess it's
maybe
okay.
we lied
Oh,
just
great.
to look cool. Like, oh yeah, we did an out and back just for the hell of it.
Maybe, but either way, I ended up finishing that day. Thank you for that.
It's great. Yikes.
Hey, I lived.
Yeah.
It's all good.
Very nice.
So I've done, let's see, gosh, I'm working on round 4 right now of the 48. But I kind of, it's not like I'm trying to grid. I'm just doing it for fun. I don't ever plan on gridding. Let's see, then I did the 67 that summer, actually, of 2018. I'm like 77 through the 100 highest. And then I started doing other things. And like I did the Monadnock Sunapee Greenway Trail. I did a couple of other shorter, like overnight backpacking trips. And now my big thing since 2019 has been working on redlining, which is pretty much the best thing ever. So
Got it, yeah. So we've talked about redlining. We've talked about sort of the, what it is. We've talked about all the drama around the naming of the red line. So you're still using the term red line. I said that I was going to start using tracing, but like this whole word thing is very difficult for me because I'm afraid I'm going to slip up and someone's going to get mad at me and I'm not going to be inclusive. So I really don't know. Like, do you have any thoughts on this, Rebecca, about how we use this term?
Well, I think that, so here's the thing here's what my issue with it is. Well, first of all, there's not every word has the same meaning. There's multiple meanings to different words. And the term redlining is hyphenated. It's technically 2 individual words. I think that if it hadn't been for all of the crazy drama that had been brought up around it, I wouldn't feel weird saying it all the time now. And I don't mind using the term tracing. I think that actually sounds fine, but I'm just so used to saying redlining that I just keep saying it. And I don't mind tracing either. I guess I just kind of keep saying redlining just because that's what I've been calling it, and I feel weird calling it something else. And also, I think that because of a lot of the background between myself and the individual that kind of made the big scene out of it, it's almost like well, gosh, if I start using that term tracing, am I giving this person sort of like letting them win almost? I don't know. That sounds really bad, because I also don't want to insult anyone, and I don't want to be offensive to anybody. They might find it offensive if I'm using this term. I've had one person, I think, and I'm pretty vocal on social media. I posted about the whole situation, and I think I had one individual say that, like, negative about the term in my messages. Everyone else was like, wait, what? I didn't even know this was an issue. Or they need to stop. Like, this is ridiculous, kind of.
Yeah, and I think we're in this period, and like over the last like 3 or 4 years, and I have young kids that are, very into sort of, I learn a lot from them, I would say, but I think that we need to recognize that we're in a period of change right now, and language and the transitions around language, like, we have to give a little bit of leeway there. So, I mean, we'll use redlining, we'll use tracing, and at the end of the day, I think we all agree we want to be as inclusive as we can be, and we want to see as many people in the outdoors as we can. It's just like it's a weird time right now, and we're all doing our best to figure out how to navigate this world without offending anybody.
Yeah, and I also think that it needs to come from the right place. Like, if you're doing it because you're genuinely feeling like this is something that you're concerned about. For example, I worked special education. That's my background. And there's this particular thing called using person-first language. So you would put the person before the disability. You don't call a person autistic. You would say a person with autism. And there's a way of saying certain things because it's using the right terminology. And I think if it's coming from the right place and you're actually genuinely an advocate for a particular population, that's one thing. But to just use it as a publicity stunt, I personally find that to be really disgusting. And that's why I feel kind of like that's what it was. And the fact that the individual took the post down off their website and everything, like, it's just, like, don't use it as a way to gain publicity. Use it because you genuinely care.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agree. So, with the red line or the trace at this point, so you spent a ton of time. So the one thing I'm very sort of focused on data and using data to tell stories. And the thing I like about the red line, and the thing I like about all the gamification of the hiking in the Northeast, is that there's a lot of tracking and a lot of keeping, basically maintaining and planning out how you're going to approach these different games. So the red line is like the ultimate game when it comes to that. So logistically, it's like if you're like a spreadsheet nerd or a list nerd, like, the red line is like the ultimate challenge, right?
Yeah, I love it because it's actually, that was what I was thinking the other day as I was doing it, is like, it's a mind game more than anything, because you have to actually, like, try to use your brain before you even head out onto the mountains, because you need to make the most sense out of whatever it is you're doing to get the miles, to get the trails. Like, you don't want to be backtracking a ton. You don't want to be wondering which way to go or missing a spur path because you screwed up planning. It's almost like a puzzle. It's like I'm putting a puzzle together.
Absolutely.
It is, yeah. And for the audience who's, if you're not familiar with this, the idea is that you hike every trail in the White Mountains. And it's like, and I've actually said this in previous episodes, like there's like 650 plus trails, but it's not even 650 trails. It's like a ton of like these little spurs and out and backs that you have to cover. And I think, what is it, Rebecca, like 1,500 miles or so of trails?
Technically it's around 15, it's a little under 1,500. But when you end up doing all these, you're going to be retracing your steps. You're going to be looking at more like 18 to 2,000 miles when all is said and done. It's a lot of mileage.
You're at, 41%? Is that what
I'm at 49, wow. I think now.
Halfway done.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's kind of, so I've been towing the last few days. I told Danielle this actually, because I'm really kind of a little ridiculously OCD about stuff. And so I hate the fact that I don't know when I officially started, and I hate the fact that it's like super, like I have a website and I tracked everything I did on there when I was actually officially working on doing it in a certain amount of time. So I have like synopsises for each of the days that I did with the trails listed and everything and a summary, but I only have that for the ones I did when I was officially working on doing it in a certain amount of time. And like, it bothers me that I don't have those synopses and trails listed from the other time. So I'm sort of thinking of starting over again just so I can track it all.
Nice. And so
that'll be my fourth time trying over.
Oh boy. Well, so the ultimate goal of this is like you've got those 1,500 miles of trails, and then you've got like anywhere from 300 to 500 extra miles of out and backs that you have to do. So the ultimate goal is to sort of optimize that so that if it's 500 miles, you want to get those out and backs down to the lowest number you possibly can, right?
Yeah. So, for example, last year, because I was doing the Northern Prezzies, the side, the Randolph Mountain Club side, that was my focus right before I got diagnosed with cancer. Mm-hmm. So I ended up having to hike within 1 week. I had to do the bottom half of Lowe's Path 3 times because that was the only way to reach the trails that are in that area and have it make sense. And it was like, I don't want to hike these 1 point whatever miles again. I just did them 2 days ago.
And how do you do the planning? Is it all just spreadsheets for you?
So the way I did it, because I'm really old school and I don't use Gaia, I used Guthook for that section of trails because it is a nightmare, but I typically don't use any technology because I'm really like I don't know, I like to do it the old way. So I have a binder of I basically took pictures of the maps and then drew lines literally with like highlighters making routes. Really? And then, so I have a 2-inch binder full of the trails printed out with.
How long did that take you?
I had to keep revisiting it. So it's kind of was a work in progress, and now it's kind of in its official state. And it took a couple months. I don't know. I sort of had been working on it for about a year.
Do you take this binder and put it in your pack?
No, I take a picture of the page.
Nice.
I don't take the whole thing with me. And I also take pictures of the guidebook pages because there are a lot of these trails that I'm on that there's not trail markers, and there's literally like the only way to navigate them if you don't use technology is by using the guidebook pages. Mm-hmm.
See, I've always felt, so I was thinking about this because, again, I'm a data geek, and I'm looking at this in the exact opposite way. Like, I'm thinking that like a project like this where you want to try to optimize how you would approach the red line would be like the perfect research project for like a master's student or a PhD, like computer science person in like distributed systems, or if you were like a geographic information systems person, like to figure out how do you make the most optimal paths of travel. Like, you'd have to put in the rules to say like, you can't do more than 20 to 25 miles a day. You have to limit the amount of out and backs. Like, I would think that if there's any software geeks that are listening to this, like that would be an awesome research project. Yeah,
I can definitely see it being something that people would really get into if they're really into that kind of thing. For me, it was more like, okay, for example, like I've done a lot of these hikes multiple times now. What do I enjoy doing? I like doing this particular loop, so I'm going to make that be part of my plan for redlining because I liked doing it. So it wasn't necessarily always about optimizing the route, sort of, although for certain areas you really do have to kind of plan logistically because there's a lot of driving. Like I've done 97% of northern New Hampshire's tab, so there are a lot of trails that are all over the place. And so you're doing a lot of driving, and that's the part where I try to be smart logistically, is the driving part.
Wow.
Got it. And then you talked about like you mostly do solo hiking, so search and rescue is part of the part of the fabric of the show. So what do you do to stay safe out there?
So I carry the 10 essentials. I have like things in my pack to make sure if I need to spend a night out in the woods, I am going to be okay. I'm going to be prepared. I carry a Garmin
InReach.
Is it InReach? It's like a satellite phone, literally.
It's great.
Okay.
So I have one of those. My husband knows where I'm going. I send him a picture of the map before I leave. I tell him if I have service, I'll text him like at the trailhead. And then I usually, as I'm hiking throughout the day, will keep in contact with him to a certain extent, depending on how busy I am. And then when I get back to my car, I text him to say I'm done. If I have service, if I don't, then I wait till I get service and then text him. Let's see what else. I carry the map. I have the guidebook. I'm not cocky about things. I'm not afraid to turn back, and I'm not afraid to backtrack if I have to. Like, I've backtracked so many times. It's not even funny because I don't know, am I on the trail or not? If it's not well marked, if it's in a wilderness area, I'm not gonna keep going if I don't think I'm on the right spot.
Yeah.
And now my watch actually I have an upgraded watch that actually shows me the trails on it, which is really cool. And I'm trying not to rely on it too heavily because it makes it easier for me to just look at my watch to navigate.
Yeah. And you probably lose, like, I spend way too much time looking at Chia on my phone, and like you do lose that connection to the trail sometimes. Like you spend all that time looking at your watch or your phone.
I only use it if I'm like, okay, I really feel like I need to look at it, because I want to try to use my brain to navigate as much as I can, because I don't want to lose those skills, because I feel like soft skills are so important that's kind of why, I don't know. I think a lot of people they rely too much on technology, and I try not to do that because I don't want to lose my ability to navigate in the wilderness.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what's the sketchiest thing that's ever happened to you? Have you ever been like, oh no, I got to hit that SOS button on the InReach?
Yeah, my worst experience was last year in March, and I did actually almost have to hit it because it was actually not really as scary. It wasn't as dangerous as I mentally thought it was. Like, I was having a panic attack, and I have a panic disorder, so I also have to take that into consideration, sort of like while I'm out there in the woods. So I was hiking Pierce, and then my goal was I was planning on doing Edmonds Path down. Which is not a very often used trail in the winter.
Yeah,
it was
I hiked that this winter.
Yeah, so I was planning on doing that. It was in March. There was a recent trail report from about a week prior, but it was extremely windy the day that I was up there. And probably, like, I would say 0 at least, if not lower, with the wind chills. I got to Eisenhower, and I was going to use the bad weather cutoff because I'm like, oof, I don't know if I want to go up there. It was beautiful. It was a bluebird day, but it was just really, really cold and windy. And of course, I don't know if you've ever done that trail in winter, but the bad weather cutoff it's like all wind blown. Like, it's not a good trail to necessarily do. I got a couple of 100 feet, or I'm not really sure how far, maybe like a quarter of a mile, if that, down towards that. And I'm like, this doesn't seem safe. So I turned around, went back to Eisenhower. And I wasn't really stopping and resting. I wasn't doing what I needed to do to take care of my body, like drinking water and, those types of things. So I get to the top of Eisenhower. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so windy. I just need to get down the other side. So I get down the backside towards Edmonds Path. And then I get to Edmonds Path, and it's all still open right there. So the wind had completely blown over the trail, and I had no idea where the trail was. But I'm like, I have to do this because I'm working on redlining, and I need to get this trail line. Like, I need to do this. I'm doing this in a set amount of time. Normally, I wouldn't have ever done that if it wasn't for the fact that I was like, I have this goal. So I kept walking forward. I kept going. I got to tree line, and then I'm like, I have no clue where the path is, because usually you can see where the trees are cut, but it was like the snow was so high that I couldn't tell where the trail was. And I started going a little bit downhill, knowing like in my head, this isn't the trail. This is not the trail. But I was like not making smart choices mentally. And then I stepped into a spruce trap, and my foot went in, and I was like, like freaking out, because I'm terrified of falling into spruce traps.
Yeah, rightly so.
And I was like having a mental breakdown, sort of like I was having just like a panic attack at that point. So I was really, really, really scared, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't want to go up Eisenhower again. All I wanted was to not go back up that stupid mountain. And I actually was like, oh my gosh. Like, I know if I press SOS, it's going to take them like 5+ hours to get to me. I know they're going to have to climb up Edmund's path probably to get to me, which is so not cool and not fair. And it wasn't like I was in any immediate danger. I was just mentally thought I was. So then I ended up having I had cell phone service, so I called my husband first and told him what was going on. And of course, he was like, well, do you know where you are? And I'm like, yeah, I know where I am. I just don't want to go back up the mountain. And he's like, well, just regroup. And anyway, so he ended up talking me down sort of like mentally and getting me into a better place. And then I just reascended Eisenhower and made my way back down Crawford Path. But like, it was more of a mental thing than anything. And I think that I was just so in my own head that I felt like, oh my gosh, I have to, like, I can't get out of this. I don't want to get out of this. I don't want to go back up that mountain. But then I kept thinking about, like, my friends are going to have to come rescue me.
Well, it's a better call, too, because the thing about, you go back, it sucks going back up the mountain. But when you get over to Crawford Path, like, you're way more likely to have people around than you would be if you got in trouble down Edmonds or if you kept going. Because I think the way I remember that section of Edmonds is that, like, if it's windblown, like it's just like if you decide to go too far to the right, like you're going to be down low and you're never going to find the trail, and then if you go to the left, you're going to be way up high. So it's like threading a needle, I would think.
Yeah, it's like I couldn't locate where the trail had been broken down through the trees, and I've done that trail multiple times in the summer, but never in winter, and it was not a good choice. It was a really stupid choice to keep going. I should never have kept going. When I got to the top of Eisenhower, I should have turned around. But like, I was so mentally determined. And I think, like, now looking back, that was definitely really, really scary. But it was more in my head than anything. And I learned a lot about what is real danger and what is I'm in my own head. And I think that there are a lot of SOS calls that are more, sometimes people are in their own heads, or then they're actually in legit danger, probably. So yeah, I learned a lot from that experience, a lot actually, and I wouldn't want to do it again, but I definitely can look back on it now and appreciate the lesson in it.
Yeah, and I could totally see that, because like, even if you did start heading down to Edmund's path after being freaked out, like, that's a long way to go. Like, you're still talking like, 2-3 miles on the mountain where no one's coming near you at that point, and then you've got to walk back on the road afterwards. So I get it.
Yeah.
So we want to transition. So I'm going to try not to cry during this segment, but we're going to talk about, there was a recent short film that came out about you, and I guess we want to just transition into, can you talk a little bit about what you've experienced over the last, I don't even know how long it is, but you were diagnosed with cancer a while back, and it's been a journey for you, right?
Yeah, so I was actually diagnosed with breast cancer in August. I think it was August 21st was the official day. And so I was in the middle of working on hiking all the trails in the White Mountain Guide, redlining, tracing, whatever you want to call it. This was my second official attempt at trying to do it in a set amount of time. So my goal was to do it in the year. And I started on June 19th. And then I was in the middle of doing this. My husband found a lump in my left breast. And I thought, I don't know, maybe I didn't think it was anything, but then I knew in my head. People who have cancer, they'll say this. It's like you almost know you have it. It's very strange. It's almost like this intuition. So, anyways, I went in and had it checked, and within an entire day of appointment, like I was at the doctor's for an entire day, and then that Friday, within a week, I knew I had breast cancer. It was a 95% chance that it was cancer when I was at that original appointment because of just the way it looked and everything. They can rate it on a scale. So anyway, so I ended up getting diagnosed, and then there was more diagnostic process. It takes a while. It took about a month to get all the data, and then found out that I had surgery in October.
September?
Wait, I'm sorry. I had surgery in September, and they removed my left nipple and then like a pound of tissue from between the two breasts. I ended up having 4 tumors, 3 in my left and 1 in my right. And they took them all out, took out a couple lymph nodes to check to see if it had spread. It hadn't, which is really good. Because of the type of breast cancer I have, they had to do more than just surgery though. So I ended up being told I needed to have chemo. And so I did 12 weeks of chemo, 12 rounds. I finished my last round of chemo in January 7th, and then I had 20 rounds of radiation, which I had my last round of radiation, I think it was March 8th. And then I'm still getting Herceptin, which is...
That's a
and then I have Herceptin, which is it's a low-risk hazardous agent, is what it says on the packaging. So it's a less extreme chemo. I get that once every 3 weeks until October. So I had a round last Thursday. I had a round. I've had 5 now. So, and then I have to do a hormone blocker pill for 10 years. So yeah, it doesn't stop really. It's just a never-ending thing that keeps going for a long time. But the more aggressive treatment has finally kind of come to a close, which is nice because I didn't realize how sick I was going through chemo until I recently am just getting it once every 3 weeks. And now I'm like, wow, I feel really awful when I get this. I think when you're in it, you don't realize how awful you feel. And you're also kind of working off of, I think, adrenaline to a certain extent too. So while going through treatment, my biggest goal was to keep hiking as much as possible because I had worked really hard to maintain a level of fitness all summer, and also because it pissed me off that I got cancer. And it was kind of like, well, I'm not going to let cancer take away my passion, so I'm going to keep doing this. And I hiked every week of chemo. I did overall, over the 12 weeks, I did 28 summits. Wow. I did 4,000 footers. And then once I started radiation, I stopped keeping track, but I hiked through radiation too. So yeah.
Now, did you piss your medical support off by doing this? Were they all like telling you you're pushing it too hard?
To be honest, no. And I think that, so I was anemic. I was definitely, it's amazing because I look at what I was doing now and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was really sick. Yeah. I mean, I was like struggling to get up these mountains. It was not easy at all because when you have low blood counts, you can't get the oxygen you need to your muscles. And so, yeah, I mean, it was really hard, but like I was so determined to do it that it was like, I'm not going to stop doing this. My oncologist, actually, I said to her when I went to my appointment before starting treatment, I said, what will alleviate some of these symptoms of like, it's called chemo brain. It's like you get really foggy and you feel horrible. Like it's awful. It's like your brain doesn't work well. And then also I said, what will help me get through this and like not be completely exhausted all the time? And she said, honestly, the only thing that seems to help is exercise, but people don't want to exercise because they feel terrible. And I was like, oh, well, I can force myself to do that. Mm-hmm. And I'm convinced that that's why I came out of it so well, and also why I had a little bit of a reprieve, because I was getting every week chemo. I didn't get a break. So a lot of people will get chemo once every 3 weeks, and they have a more aggressive treatment for that week, but then they have 2 weeks to recover. And I didn't get reprieve. So it got to the point at the end where it was like, I have hours where I feel normal, and that's it. Not even days. Like, it was really bad.
Yeah, you know where I would be the most concerned. So if I'm thinking of like, what is her? I'm sitting here being like, what is her husband thinking about this? He must be freaking out. But you know where I would be the most nervous if I was him would be like the drive home, because you're not like right in the White Mountains. Like, you've got to drive home for like an hour and a half. And I think to myself, like, I'll hike like a 5 or an 8 mile hike, and then I've got to drive home 2.5 hours. And like, I'm exhausted. Like, I'm pinching myself to stay awake. Like, I can't imagine what you're going through, having gone through treatment, and then you're going hiking, and then you've got to stay focused to drive home for an hour and a half.
I think because I was at such a higher level of fitness that a 10-15 mile hike every day was normal for me. And then to go from that to doing 5 to 7 or 8 miles or 9 at the most was like, this doesn't feel like anything.
Yeah.
And also, I was very determined, and I think you can do things you wouldn't be surprised. You'd be surprised what you're capable of doing if you're really determined to do it. So, and I would do it purposely, like plan it out. So on my best day of the week, I would go on a hike. I wouldn't go, the worst days where I could barely function. I would plan it out. And I also purposely, I exercised 5 days a week through chemo. So I would hike, and then I would do other stuff throughout the week. So I'd always go on walks. Even on my bad days, I would try to walk on the treadmill, even if it was for only 20 minutes, which was ridiculous that was hard, but that was really hard. So I think that helped too, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and then you're solo hiking. So I can't imagine what it's like, but I sometimes I'll solo hike, and you do think about your mortality sometimes. Like, I'm getting a little bit older. I'm not as old as Stomp, but you think about it. Like, even especially like people were talking about like, oh, this podcast and it's great. And I sort of joke around, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'll have a legacy that people can look back on and things like that. But like, then you just put it out of your head for like after 2 minutes. But what you're dealing with, like, you can't get it out of your head that easy. And then you're hiking in the woods. Like, it must be a really hard time to process something like that.
It's almost like ever since I got my diagnosis, I'm floating above my body watching it happen to someone else. And I know that's kind of a coping strategy that happens to people who have trauma. It's like dissociation, I guess, is what it's called. And there are moments where it hits me that it's real. And it's like, holy crap, this is terrifying. And I cannot believe this is my life. And then it goes away. It's like, it's like your body, you can't handle it mentally, so your brain does that where it dissociates.
If I can make an observation, I don't think many people know, but one of your passions is writing, blogging, writing, whatever. And you've helped me in the past with some of my little writing adventures. Much appreciated. But I've been really just amazed at how public you've been with this whole journey, and how it would seem to me that you're using writing as some form of therapy almost. You're just putting it out there and just venting through your words, and I just think that's really neat. Is that sort of the case? You using your writing to some degree? I
think so, and also because I want to remember that I did this, so I've been documenting the crap out of it, because I'm like, kind of for my own self, so I can look back and say, oh my gosh, I can't believe I did that. And I know I'm not going to remember what I felt that week unless I write about it that week. So I did, every week of chemo, I wrote a blog, and I still haven't actually gone back and read them, but like, I have them just in case. And I also did it so there was a lot of people. So when I got diagnosed, I have no family history. So I have no clue what to expect. And all I knew is what was on TV, which was really scary. And the worst part, I think, is the fear of it all and the unknown. So I documented a lot of it and was really public about it, because I never wanted anyone to be as afraid as I was. And I thought, well, I'll put myself out there so other people will know in case they get diagnosed, or if they are diagnosed, they have someone they can look at and say, okay, I can kind of feel like I'm not alone. And I also am not as scared, because Rebecca went through it and she was okay. So
Absolutely. Yeah, that's phenomenal.
Yeah. And then, so there was the subject of a short film that just came out. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. I watched it. I can tell you, like, just be prepared. It's a very emotional film, and it's a great story. And I think it tells your story really well. And, you know, can you talk a little bit about how that project came to be, and talk a little bit about your friend Monique that was part of that film as well?
yeah, so there's a person on social media named Tommy Corey, and he's a photographer and a thru hiker, and his handle is Torque in the Dirt. He's an amazing photographer, and he's doing a series of visual podcasts documenting people in the outdoors, and he's trying to show the diversity of the outdoors. So he actually approached me and said, you know, he interviewed me sort of and asked if I'd be interested. And I said, you know, of course, sure, I'd love to do that, because it'll help people know more about, you know, you can do this and you can get out there while going through treatment and stuff. So I had a former student that was diagnosed back in, I think it was 2019. Yeah, 2019 with a very aggressive form of cancer. And she ended up passing away December 11th. And so we had a really good connection, because she helped me through my beginning parts of treatment. And so when she passed away, it was awful, obviously. And I wanted a legacy for her a bit too. So when Tommy and I filmed this whole story about me going through cancer treatment, and sort of just like my story about that as well as hiking, I wanted to incorporate a lot of, and we talked a lot about Monique, because the girl went through things that no one should ever have to go through, and she was 19 when she died, and the things that she had to decide to do in order to not die are things that no one should ever have to decide to do. And I just wanted her story to be told, because I think that there's so many people out there that are going through this, and I didn't realize it until I was in it myself. And I wanted her story to be part of my story, because it really was part of my story. It was, I mean, that girl, people say I'm strong, but I'll tell you what, like, I don't know if I know anyone that was as strong as her, to be completely honest. And she never once complained, and she never was mad about it, and she never really showed just what level of pain she was in. I can't even imagine the things that she had to do doing those things. And she did it because she didn't want to die. So yeah, I really wanted her story told too. Yeah,
it's an amazing, I mean, the cinematography, the pacing, the way that, you know, the story was told was really amazing. Like, he's a very talented filmmaker, and your story was so inspiring.
Mm-hmm. Thanks.
What sort of have you heard? You must have heard a ton of feedback from people after the film came out, I would guess.
Yeah, a lot of people were crying. I felt really bad.
Yeah, oh yeah, I was crying like a big pussy.
So many people were crying. Tommy made a story after that was like a funny, joking one, because he felt bad for making so many people cry. I was mostly just, I think more than anything, I just wanted to demonstrate that there's a lot more strength in you than you'd think, and it's not a choice. It's not like I chose to get cancer, and Monique certainly didn't. Like, no one chooses this. And before I got diagnosed, I mean, I guess I always imagined maybe that, and it sounds really weird, but not that people choose to get it, but like that they're able to handle it, and I would never be able to handle it. And then, of course, somehow I got cancer, and it's like the one thing I never wanted to do and never thought I could handle, I got. Somehow I handled it.
Yeah, and where are you now? Are you... and everybody has sort of a grieving process or a way that they process this, but like, where are you at this point with cancer and in your life?
I have moments where it hits me like really scary, where, oh my gosh, I could get this again. Because you always think in your head, like, when is it coming back? when am I, and you kind of are always mentally prepared for that. You don't ever let your guard down, sort of like, what happens if I get it back? This is what I need to remember, that, okay, if it comes back, this is what's going to happen. You sort of plan for it. I think the way you'd plan for anything. I think you also get a little bit, sometimes I forget that it's a very real and very scary thing that could happen again to me, because I get kind of, I don't know if complacent is the right word, but I stop having my guard up sometimes and forget that I have cancer or had cancer or whatever, because I'm not in it like I was with the treatment. And then I'll remember again, like, oh my gosh, I have to be careful. I have to have my guard up. I know it sounds really bad, but like, you always kind of feel that way, I think, or at least you do when you're in the middle of active treatment. And the other thing, that I'm at this place where I don't want cancer treatment to stop ever, because I feel safe if I'm getting chemo, which is so gross, because you hate chemo. And I don't so I have a port, it's a plastic thing right here that they put the chemo in. And I don't want it taken out ever. Like, I want that thing in there, because I feel like as long as I have my port, they can always give me more chemo. It's really bad.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you get used to that. I mean, I'm a creature of habit. I think my vibe, from my guess, is because, the repetitive hiking, and you're used to sort of an exercise routine. You're probably somebody that is, doesn't like to get out of their routine, and you get comfort from sort of the sameness of day after day. But spring is here, and things are going to change, I think. Going to get nicer.
Yeah, and I definitely hate getting chemo now. So, like, I had it last week, and I felt really awful kind of the last week or so. And now I'll start to feel a little bit better for 2 weeks. And by the end of the 2 weeks, I'm like back to normal, sort of. And I don't want to have it again, because it's like, then I feel awful again. I have to plan my hikes around it too, which is frustrating.
Yeah. What do you think by the end of the summer? Like, do you have like a goal where you want to be X percentage done with the trace or the red line?
Not really. I keep working on it now, because it's spring and I want to do trails that I can do. I want to work on it still, but I'm also kind of thinking a lot about sort of these short, long trails that I want to do. And I also want to go back and redo the 67, the peaks in Vermont and Maine this summer, just for fun. So I'm kind of a little bit all over the place right now. I also planned out the southern New Hampshire trail system. I created a binder of those, planned out the hikes and everything. So I don't know, I'm just kind of a little bit all over the place, and I'm liking the fact that I'm not having to stick to a strict schedule, because when you're working on a red line or a trace, you really are kind of stuck sort of on a schedule with it, if you have a specific time frame. And I'm loving the fact that I can do whatever I want, sort of.
I have a question. I'm curious, in the psychological realm, are you any different from the SockedIn that was stuck in that spruce trap to the SockedIn that we have today with us, psychologically, or managing anxiety and stress and things like that?
Yeah. When I first got diagnosed, the day they found the tumors and they're doing the ultrasound, it was the most terrifying experience ever. And I'm by myself because of COVID. You can't have anyone with you for any of these things. So I remember that night I couldn't sleep. It was probably the first time in my life that I can ever think of where I genuinely did not want to go to sleep at all, because I knew if I woke up the next morning, I was one step closer to being told I had cancer. And there was nothing else I wanted than, I did not want to face that. And I think going through that whole process, it made me realize how, of course the mountains are scary and bad things can happen, but gosh, there's nothing out there that is as scary as what I went through in that first month getting diagnosed. It was the most terrifying experience of my life, hands down. No one wants to hear that they have cancer. No one wants to ever be told that. They sat me down because I was gonna not do chemo. I didn't want to do chemo. And then the medical director, the surgeon, sat me down and said, like, this will kill you, basically, and the type of cancer you have 10 years ago would have been a death sentence. And so it was like a real eye-opener, because it's not a game, kind of, and I think, you know, you choose to go out there and hike those mountains, and you make a conscious choice to do the things that you're doing out there, and you might screw up and then get hurt because of it, but it was your choice. Like, this was not my choice. And I have no say whatsoever in whether the cancer responds to the treatment. So it's really awful.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I mean, it's been such an inspiring thing to follow along. And again, you've been an open book about this since the diagnosis, and you know, it's really inspiring. And you know, we are kind of hitting the end here. But before we wrap up, I do want to give you a chance to again plug. So you talked about the filmmaker, but there was also a corporate sponsor here. So can you just give us a plug for all the folks that were involved in making the film?
Yeah, the film is sponsored by Knock Outdoors. It's CNOC Outdoors, and they make these collapsible water bottles, and they also make water bladders and trekking poles. So they actually sponsored the film. For Tommy to be able to make the films, he has to get some, sponsorship financially. I didn't make any money off of it. It was, they gave me products and everything, but other than that, it was, I just did it because I wanted to do something to help the community, but Tommy needs to make money, obviously, to do these things, so.
Yeah. I'm going to actually, I was on their website the other day, and I'm actually going to get some water bottles, because I'm going to switch out my day pack. We're going to have to do a gear show eventually. I'm going to switch out my day pack to something that has actual shoulder pockets so I can put water bottles in. So I was looking at their products. So
or an IPA.
Check it out.
You can stick an IPA.
Yeah, or an IPA, yeah. But we'll put we'll put all that information in the show notes so that people can go check them out.
Now, where do we get a hold of you, Socked? What are your what's your handle on Insta and all that?
So my Instagram is SockedIn Hikes, and actually I just changed my website to my name instead of SockedIn Hikes, because I thought I should probably use my real name if I'm planning on being a writer, using it as a portfolio. So yeah, so my website is RebeccaSperry.com now. But I think it still works if you do SockedInHikes.com. Either way, it's RebeccaSperry.com now. But I basically just use Instagram. I don't really use the other socials.
Awesome. Thank you.
Very cool. Well, thank you for joining us on this dumb podcast and dealing with me and Stomp. We're total amateurs on this, but
no, this is really fun.
We really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. You're our first guest, and we're very excited and honored that you would be joining us.
Well, it's been great chatting with you guys.
Yeah, maybe you can fill in for me so I don't have to do this every week with Mike.
Okay, sounds good.
Seriously, I'm sick of this guy. So,
oh my gosh!
All right, let's cue the exit here. So, thanks again, everyone, and we will look forward to seeing you next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the show, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to learn more about the topics covered on today's show, please check out the show notes and safety information on SLASRpodcast.com. That's SLASR podcast.com. You can also follow the show on Facebook and Instagram. We hope you'll join us next week for another great show. Until next time, on behalf of Mike and Stomp, get out there and crush some peaks.
Now covered in scratches, blisters, and bug bites, Chris Staff wanted to complete his most challenging day hike ever.
Fish and Game officers say the hiker from Florida activated an emergency beacon yesterday morning. He was hiking along the Appalachian Trail when the weather started to get worse. Officials say the snow was piled up to 3 feet in some spots, and there was a wind chill of -1 degree.
And there's 3 words to describe this race. Do we all know what they are? Only one hill!
Here's Lieutenant James Neeland, New Hampshire Fish and Game. Lieutenant, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
What are some of the most common mistakes you see people make when they're heading out on the trails to hike here in New Hampshire?
It seems to me the most common is being unprepared, and I think if they just simply visited hikesafe.com and got a list of the 10 essential items and had those in their packs, they probably would have no need to ever call us at all.